Welcome to Player Profiler's Dynasty Reddit AMA. I'm Theo Gremminger. I'm joined by Dario Offstien. And Dario and I have been doing these Reddit AMAs for a couple weeks now. And we had maybe a little bit of Dynasty news over the weekend, Dario, and thought maybe we should stream this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the biggest event of draft season happened over the weekend or anything like that.
And Dario, how great is it that it wasn't like we had to tune in for every single moment of every single day and like hope to see our fantasy focused players. They put them all in one day. So we got to see the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the wide receivers all in one day. And it was the tight ends on Friday. It was a beautiful thing. I was able to watch pretty much everything on Saturday. I still get super, super excited about the combine. People think it's, something we don't want to put too much into. And of course, we don't want it to like completely sway our process. But I love seeing guys that I'm into confirm with like athletic testing numbers. The Xavier Worthy thing was one of the coolest things we've ever seen in the history of the combine. And I know for somebody who's analytically driven like yourself, you had to have been excited about Brock Bowers weighing in at 245, alleviating some concerns about him being like a super light outlier. He's right there. Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta, they're all the exact same size. Evan Ingram's 240 pounds. He was targeted a lot last year. So this is a really big win. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, love to see that for him. Very excited, obviously. I mean, I think I think it would have taken something really drastic to knock him out of that top tier that, everyone has him in. And he very much cemented that.
So I'm going to start firing away some of these questions. You can get Dario and I questions, either drop them in the chat here on, Twitter, on YouTube, but then also our Reddit link. It's posted on my Twitter right now. It's in the YouTube show description. If you're actually, it might not be, so don't quote me on that. If you look on my Twitter, you can get to it, or you can just go to Dynasty Reddit and you can pull it up. But Dario, first question. What's up, Theo? Do you think both Texas wide receivers go in the first round now? This person is referring to Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. I feel like it's almost a lock right now that Xavier Worthy goes top 20. And I think it's almost, to me, I'm going to be surprised if Adonai Mitchell doesn't get drafted after that 4.35 40, after all his testing measurements. You're talking about a guy who led Texas in touchdown catches. Now we know he's a next level athlete. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're completely right. I mean, I expect to see very high draft capital for both these guys. AD Mitchell, I mean, Xavier Worthy obviously stole the show, but AD Mitchell very much proved everything we needed to see from him from an athletic standpoint on Saturday.
Here's one for you, Dario. This is a question. Roman Wilson, and it's funny because we knew Roman Wilson was going to be fast, and he runs like a 4.4 140, but it was like the wrong year to run 4.41. Like Wilson was the guy before the combine. We thought that he could potentially be a 4.3 flat type guy. So I'm not going to say like anybody watching Roman Wilson and seeing him at the Senior Bowl, this is a guy who does not struggle to get open, and he uses his speed well on the football field. It's not like he's some track and field star who just happens to run well. But the question is, where do you see his fantasy ceiling? Let's say he gets second round draft capital. Where do you see him? Is he a guy that you're super interested in, or do you think he's going to be more of a role player? Is it team fit? Take it any way you want.
I mean, I think a guy like him, probably absolute ceiling, you're looking at a Tyler Lockett type trajectory, probably. A very savvy route runner. I think a little bit faster than Lockett. I can't remember Lockett's 40-yard dash straight line speed off the top of my head, but that's kind of the skill set that I would see. Looks like he would emulate.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's also kind of like, we like a lot of these wide receivers in this class. They're not all going to be stars, and I just struggle getting Roman Wilson up to a point in my personal wide receiver rankings. Like he's inside the top 10, and I'm still working on those. And we did a big update. You definitely check it out at playerprofiler.com. Dario, the Podfather, myself, Evan Ringler, we were talking about these rookie changes, and we actually updated a lot. We're probably going to do a second update over the next few days, but if you want to see where Jalen Wright and Marshawn Lloyd and Trey Benson are at, Xavier Worthy are at after their impressive combines, you can go check it out right now in our Dynasty rankings. But Roman Wilson, he kind of stayed right where he was. We had him in the second round of Dynasty rookie drafts, and I think he will still be there. In Superflex leagues, it's really hard for me to see him landing in the first round. And
yeah, for sure.
On him, it's just a statement to the overall quality of the wide receiver class.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely tough to push him into the first. I guess. Have you seen what his? I don't know. Where's he going right now? He seems like an early second type guy, or people are pushing him into the first.
I think top 50 is a reasonable bet. I think he's going to be a second round pick. And there's certain. I mean, you bring up like a Tyler Lockett. I think it could be a Matty Kiwoom had a Deontay Johnson, like certain teams could see him like a Deontay Johnson. That would get me excited when you start talking about like the heavily targeted type guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there's a number of sweet spot second round teams that somewhere between like pick 33 and pick like 50. There's a lot of teams that could be in the market for a wide receiver. So I think he'll end up there. You could also see him be sort of a replacement guy. A team like a Pittsburgh could say, we have Deontay Johnson on the books for one more year. Let's, draft a guy and make him our wide receiver 3 this year and then elevate him the following season. And he sees really big production and usage leap in year 2. So I think there's going to be a lot of teams in that wheelhouse, where Wilson's going to be selected. But I'm going to answer in the chat. I'll take this one. Not sure on Star, but definitely am intrigued. And depending on the landing spot, he's going to be right on the 1-2 line for rookie drafts.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's only 2 or 3 players in this draft where today you'd feel comfortable saying that guy's going to be a star.
I agree with you on that. But I think all the big 3 wide receivers. Interested on your thoughts on this one, because we haven't had these sort of class versus class discussions. But you're a huge Drake London guy. You're a USC Trojan. Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Olave all go in the top 12. I feel like this group is so much further ahead at this point in the process than we saw with those guys in the 2022 draft. And we saw those guys all go in the top 12. Like for me, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr., we were, pretty convinced on. I don't have any questions. We've had them very high up in our dynasty rankings, but like Rome Odunze, to me, him running a 4.45, 6'3", 212, I'll take him over any wide receiver in the 2023 class right now. And that 2022 class, I think I like him more at this point in the process than I did maybe any of those guys. He would have been probably wide receiver 2 for me in that draft class, which is loaded. So I don't know. Those 3 are just they're Teflon. Those guys are completely locked in.
Yeah, Odunze, I think there were some questions still to be answered, and he answered them resoundingly.
I'm taking a couple more of these questions, guys. If we ever hear any awkward pauses from Dario and I, it's because we're typing in the Reddit chat. It's hard to type and talk at the same time. I mentioned a lot of him. And I love that he's a second round price tag. Hey, did we see any good questions in the YouTube chat, Dario?
There's someone asking about a specific situation where they have 5 first-round picks in their Superflex rookie draft. So that's I don't know if you want to pull that one up.
So let me see. I'll pull it up. I'm going to get to the next one here. Why don't you start taking that one? Let's see. I have a similar question in our Reddit chat before we get to your YouTube chat one. This person says, I'm in a rebuild with 104, 106, 112. This is a fun trade question. Would you move T. Higgins, Jackson Smith and Jigba / Jordan Addison as a wide receiver reroll in a 1-quarterback league, or build around those 3 and just stick with the 3 first? This wide receiver class seems special. I would say this. Having T. Higgins, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Jordan Addison, they're all players that we bet on, Dario. but I don't think that there's like a lead pipe lock that you see one of those guys as a wide receiver 1 this year or next year. They all are going to be very useful players for our dynasty team. But if Roma Dunze is the top player on the board when you're picking 104, if we are projecting that you see Brock Bowers at the 103, Neighbors at the 2, and Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 1, I love having wide receiver depth on my dynasty teams, and it wouldn't scare me off of using that 104. So I think this. I'm not sure if there's a little bit more context to this trade question.
It's not clear whether that's a super flex league or not. I mean, the value of the 104 and 106.
No,
I think
he says one quarterback.
I missed that.
Yeah.
One quarterback. Yeah, that's tighter. I think you'd hope to get Odunze at the 104 there. I think another thing to keep in mind is like you don't need to have that's not a decision you necessarily need to make today.
Yes.
Like your team doesn't have needs in March or April or May. Like you can be deeper at wide receiver than you think you will need at this point of the off season. So playing with that mindset of, I have to have a good looking starting lineup in March is not really optimal dynasty strategy either.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Stack the talent and then fill the needs. You've seen all these back-to-back seasons, Dario, where you're getting such running back production out of guys like Jamal Williams, Raheem Mostert. You could have used Gus Edwards for multiple weeks last season. It happens every year where you can get all this running back utility from guys that are cheap in Dynasty that nobody's going to say, I'm not going to accept a third and a 2/3 for Raheem Mostert after game 1 of last year. So they're always out there that you can always fill your roster with these back end RB2 types. You can't ever make up for it with like the truly elite running backs, but there's always going to be guys like that, let alone next man in type running backs like Jerome Ford, Jalen Warren. Those kind of guys gave you a lot of value this year too.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that, if you would have told someone this time last year what Raheem Mostert was going to do compared to like Jonathan Taylor, for example, you can have guys that look really nice in your starting lineup today, but I know you believe this firmly that you should build your dynasty team around your wide receivers. So I wouldn't necessarily be in a rush to get rid of any of those, T, JSN, Addison, just because you think you're replacing them with Odunze or, any of the other wide receivers in this first round.
Have you seen the narrative that Jordan Addison's a sell and Jordan Addison's also a fade in like best ball and early redraft ADP? There's like a lot of people in the dynasty community, in the fantasy community, kind of on that, and he's an avoid at ADP on underdog. I've been taking him on underdog. I think it's we can't ignore what he did this year and how productive he was as a rookie. And I understand that there's like touchdown regression and all those metrics, and we have a little bit of indecision on who his quarterback's going to be. But he wasn't just producing when he had Kirk Cousins. Like he produced the entire season, had a number of spike weeks. It's a guy we really liked last year in the process at Player Profiler. He certainly delivered, and I don't know why I would back off of that profile in year 2. What are your thoughts on Addison right now? Let's call him. I'll pull up his underdog ADP because I'm going to call him.
I got it in front of me right now.
Okay, cool.
He's wide receiver 33, but that is also pick 52 overall. I think that's just illustrates how insanely wide receiver heavy underdog ADP trends to be. And the reality is you need to have 4 of those receivers in the top 40 before you hit that cliff in the 6th or 7th round. So, I mean, it's almost like whether you like Addison or not, like you should be drafting all those receivers in that area on underdog. And I think you're right that he's showing a lot of promise. I don't disagree with the touchdown variance argument either. I think that's a very strong thing to pay attention to. And obviously his ADP is going to react to whatever happens with Kirk Cousins. I think I like him better than these guys going near him. Like, I mean, Terry McLaurin and Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, I don't think have the ceiling that a guy entering his second year in the league after having a successful rookie year and a first round pick and a Biletnikoff Award winner. Like, I think that you you roll the dice on guys like Jordan Addison.
And I'll say that the one like variable you bring up, like the touchdown regression, and that could be true. But I think in terms of like his usage, the one thing's not being factored in is we don't necessarily have a timeline for TJ Hawkinson's return this year. So let's say TJ Hawkinson misses the first half of the season, you could see a ridiculous target share for the Jefferson and Addison. Like this could be like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle in year one of the Mike McDaniel offense, where they get like a ridiculous 55% target share, 58% combined target share, something crazy. KJ Osborne's also a free agent. So I don't know. It's just an interesting one.
KJ Osborne is a guy I have not thought about in a minute.
I don't want you to spend too much time. Don't think too much about KJ Osborne. But you know how it is when those wide receivers that are like Osborne leave a team, it doesn't necessarily mean that the next guy in has the same sort of usage. Once in a while, it can be just a little bit more going to the wide receivers at like the top of the food chain. There's always a variable with that. Like certainly Minnesota takes a wide receiver on day 2 in like the 3rd round to replace Osborne, or in the 4th round, and we have an idea who it is. I can back that up. But right now, wide receiver 3 is a big question mark for them. And the tight end that was one of the most highly targeted tight ends in football is going to be injured to miss the beginning of the year. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a question here about the rookie running backs. Someone says they have Jonathan Brooks as their RB1 despite the injury, asking how we feel about Marshawn Lloyd and Jalen Wright, because they say that running back is the biggest need for a couple of his teams. I feel like Marshawn Lloyd is not getting talked about enough for how well he ran at the combine. Everything kind of landed perfectly for him.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And I think at the end of the day, he's in the mix to be the first running back selected by an NFL team. I think there's a chance he could sneak into the 2nd round. I actually think that there's a chance we see multiple running backs in the 2nd round. Marshawn Lloyd runs a 4.46 at 220 pounds. That's special. And it's sort of like an eye test thing. Every time you see him, like Senior Bowl, running the combine drills, it's a guy that looks good doing it. Like he's very fluid, very well-built player. And what I like about Marshawn Lloyd is we saw production in the SEC. Then we saw production when he transferred to USC. So we love the fact that he went to USC and USC, because we're never going to get confused about what school he went to. But this is a player that doesn't have that insane tread on the tires. And I know that there's a certain, when a guy like Jonathan Taylor enters the league, we're not like, oh my God, he's got too many carries, let's fade him. But Marshawn Lloyd never had more than 150 carries in any college season. So you're getting a guy that's sort of fresh. I love Marshawn Lloyd. I think Marshawn Lloyd, yeah, you're right. Trey Benson, a big talk of the weekend, and certainly Jalen Wright deserves all this recent chatter. Jonathan Brooks, if he comes back healthy and the NFL teams show the draft capital in him, that's a guy we're super excited about. But Marshawn Lloyd, absolutely in the mix to be RB1 by the NFL teams. And a guy that I would like a lot of on my dynasty rosters. I think that this running back class I'm getting more and more excited about. I also love the fact that Dario, it's the first time in a while that you're not going to have to use like the 104 in single QB, and really probably not even the top 7 picks in actually I can bet on that. You're not going to have to use the top 7 picks in a Superflex league, and you're not going to have to use the top 4 picks in a single QB league, and you're going to have exposure to potentially RB1 in the class, RB2 in the class. That's a bet that I'm much more comfortable making. And then we have a ton of really positive landing spots too, potentially for some of these running backs. So a lot of things to like about Marshawn Lloyd and these you brought up the Jalen Wrights, I brought up Trey Benson, and I'll throw this out to you, Dario. I think another like underrated number that was hit this weekend, Blake Corum running a 4.53. That is like a big win for him. I don't think anybody ever looks at Blake Corum and says this guy's going to be an absolute burner, but he runs just fast enough. He gets a speed score that's almost identical to like a Javonte Williams. You want to see that plus 95 speed score. He gets it. He's a little bit below 100, but enough that I think the NFL teams are going to take him on day 2 as well. So a lot of wins this week from the running backs.
Yeah, I think just overall, one of the themes was this running back class really solidified itself. Like you said, Corum, Benson, Jalen Wright, and Jonathan Brooks. I mean, he kind of, I feel like we're seeing his stock fall a little bit just because he didn't do anything at the combine, but his profile is still pretty solid. I mean, and I'd be very excited to get him in any of my rookie drafts.
Yeah, so I'm taking I'm not pessimistic. I love Jonathan Brooks, but I'm gonna take a cautious approach with where I'm ranking him, and I think where we have him is good right now on our dynasty rankings, because if an NFL team says we don't have concerns, we think he's coming back, this is a guy that we think will be playing this year, and the timetable could be you see Jonathan Brooks in August. But if you see him fall to the 4th round, Dario, and he's like running back 5 off the board, I don't think he's tanked, because I believe in the talent and the fact that there are teams that are taking an injury discount, but I'm not going to love it. I really want to see his profile land on day 2. That's kind of my only concern. Do you think that's a little overblown?
I think that's fair, because I mean I think the outcome where Jonathan Brooks just doesn't pan out is he doesn't get the draft capital, so therefore the team that drafted him doesn't feel that same degree of commitment that they might with another running back that they drafted on day 2. And then what ends up happening is he comes back later in the year, shows some stuff, but then next offseason, when that team is looking at their running back room, they say, oh, we still need some pieces, and they go and draft another running back early, or they bring in a free agent. And then you're looking at year 2, he kind of has the split workload that you really kind of want to see a guy overcome in year 1. And it's just kind of rolling lack of opportunity from this injury. So I think that's a valid concern.
Yeah. So let's take a couple more questions. I see that there's a couple in the chat. Any other ones that you want to answer here? I'm typing away on Reddit. That's why I'm asking you to do that one.
Yeah. Let's. I mean, one guy is just asking us to discuss Marvin Harrison, which I know is probably your favorite question in the world. So
okay, so I'll sum it up. I'll sum it up for you in one sentence. Okay, I'll do a Marvin Harrison haiku, and you tell me if I fill the haiku rules, because you're a big poetry guy. Calvin Johnson, AJ Green, Julio Jones, MHJ is him. There you go. That's a haiku. I think I hit him. Or did I go too long, too short?
I don't know. You might have gone too. Calvin Johnson is only 4.
Okay, so Calvin Johnson, AJ Green.
AJ Green. It's 575.
575? Okay, so I don't know if I got 575, but I'm close to it. I mean, you don't need to overthink this one. He's a next level athlete. He is, like, if you want to put them all in a bucket with Odunze and Neighbors, he had more touchdown catches as a collegiate, continually playing with elite players at Ohio State. This is a guy that has the lineage where his father was one of the better wide receivers of all time. He's like born ready. I think that the question is, where do you want to rank him in Dynasty among all wide receivers, rather than what you do with him in your rookie drafts. Now, there has been more of a conversation on Malik Neighbors versus Marvin Harrison Jr. At PlayerProfiler, we have a gap between the two, but we love Malik Neighbors. Like, Malik Neighbors is way up there. He's definitely a 1B type for us when it comes down to it. But Dario, it's like, the one thing I don't need to do is sit there thinking about a guy I know enough about that I'm going to take him at the 101 in single QB. My question for you, Dario, is where are you taking Marvin Harrison Jr. in Superflex right now? Because I think he's right in play at the 102 in Superflex, and that's despite potentially three more quarterbacks drafted in the top 10. That's how good Marvin Harrison Jr. is to me.
For a second, I thought you were talking about Superflex startups, and I was like, what?
No, but yeah, Superflex startups. Superflex startups. It's like, hey, I'm going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. ahead of AJ Brown, ahead of Garrett Wilson, to show you my sort of enthusiasm for him. Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Marvin Harrison Jr. That's kind of like the cutoff line for me for,
right.
I have this known commodity, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think I could do that. And certainly the CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, like God tier. But after that, I'm taking Marvin Harrison Jr. over pretty much any other wide receiver in a startup.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I mean, he's, we've been talking about it since really like last year before he even played a snap of the 2023 college football season that he would be a top 5 NFL receiver as soon as he set foot on an NFL field. So I think I'm with you on that. And I mean, obviously, we hope he lands somewhere with a good quarterback and with a high volume passing offense. I think, he's been mocked to Arizona a lot, and that would be a pretty nice landing spot with a stable quarterback situation. But we won't know until draft day. So I think that's going to be the biggest variable in terms of, how we project his career, really. But
What's your nightmare
profile.
landing spot for Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Probably
Tennessee,
New England.
New England. So I had
Because
that
I
one.
mean, you have to realistically say a team with a top 5 pick. Like, yeah, like sure, it would be a nightmare if he landed in. I
There's
don't
a
know.
chance. I think there's a chance we could see if JJ McCarthy continues to get the NFL enthusiasm, and there's more and more teams trying to trade up. There's a chance that we could see teams 1 through 4 all be going quarterback. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think that there's a chance. I think it was like Diana Rossini today was saying that there's people making that sort of chatter that could be quarterback, 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 and then the draft sort of starts at 5 with the Chargers. That would be like the dream landing spot for a wide receiver to be, Justin Herbert's number 1 option would be really exciting. But I don't know. There's a chance Harrison Jr. does fall out of the top 5 based on what if the Chargers decide to go in a different direction there at 5. But you're right. I mean, he's locked into the top 6, top 7 at the very least.
Yeah, I mean the Giants would be rough too at 6. As one of our commenters is also happy to mention. We've got another question here too from a super commenter.
Nice! So, I love super commenters.
It's about this guy's 12-team Superflex roster: Jordan Love, Jimmy G, Daniel Jones,
Aiden O'Connell.
Aiden O'Connell, T. Higgins, good receiver room, and sort of not so great running backs with Monty and Gainwell. They have the 101, Harrison, Caleb. They're saying they don't.
No,
really
you take with this team. I'm taking Caleb Williams.
I think so too. I mean, you have to with exactly within the context of this team.
But if he doesn't like the team, if you can trade down to the 102 and get Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 102 and gain something else, and then actually be able to trade Chris Olave for Kyler Murray, like as a fundamental thing in a Superflex league, if you can trade Chris Olave for Kyler Murray, just accept that deal right now and then worry about what you do with your Superflex pick later, because that's a huge there's a big delta between a quarterback like Kyler Murray and a wide receiver like Chris Olave. Like Dario, if I could maybe twist your arm and get you to take my Kyler Murray for like Justin Jefferson, Kyler Murray, I could maybe get you to say, hey, if it's wide receiver 1, do it. But Chris Olave, we're talking about a guy that we hope is a top 10 wide receiver for a quarterback that could be a top 5 quarterback. Kyler Murray will score more fantasy points this year than Chris Olave, 100%. You take that quarterback deal. Mark, I hope this helped you out. We appreciate the super questions. Those are always nice.
Yeah, completely. I think you're right. I mean, I would imagine, if that's the offer straight up, you take it every time. How much would it take for you to, like, say you have Olave, how much would you be willing to add on to get Kyler?
Significant amount, because it's so difficult for me to get. It's so difficult to get Superflex value where you get quarterbacks that can give you that difference-making potential. And Dario, Kyler Murray, correct me if I'm wrong, as director of analytics, his lowest point per game finish as a starting quarterback in the NFL is quarterback 11. He's never finished below quarterback 11 at any point in his career, and I believe that was his rookie season. The only concern about Kyler Murray is we've seen him miss time with injuries. Could happen to anybody. But in terms of the ability he gives us with his rushing ability, plus his continued ability to put up fantasy points, and I just think that the offense is heading in the right direction. We like Trey McBride a lot. I think I think that Gannon kind of gets it, and I think that this is an organization that is going to add a wide receiver for him in the draft. whether it's Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. Like Kyler Murray, I think I would add something significant to Chris Olave to get that sort of player on my Superflex roster and just not have to worry about quarterback as much. I can always catch up at wide receiver, and Chris Olave is not a big enough difference maker at wide receiver that I'm not going to be able to overcome him. I'm not going to be able to find Kyler Murray's sort of growing on trees on the trade market.
Totally agree with that.
So here's a question. This person has Jonathan Brooks as their RB1, even with the injury. How do you feel about Marshawn? Oh, you answered that? Okay.
About that one.
Okay, cool. That one was already done. Let me pull up a couple more. As everybody, you can get your questions in usually by Sunday evening or Monday morning. We're going to have a link on PlayerProfiler Twitter listing the Reddit AMA link that you could just get your questions in early. You can also just go to Dynasty Reddit and get your questions in. It's usually posted in there. So get those questions in early. We'll try to answer all of them.
Yeah, I think this is a good question here. What's the earliest you would take one of the running backs in single quarterback, assuming they get decent draft capital? Just pulling up our rankings real quick. I mean,
okay, so I'll start talking because I was thinking about this. We just recorded Sonic Truth with Alan and Matt Kelly, the Podfather, and Dario. There's some teams that we talk about the second round, and I'll throw this one out to you. The Philadelphia Eagles select your guy Jalen Wright or Marshawn Lloyd with the 53rd overall selection, and you could say Philly's probably not going to use a second rounder on a running back.
Yeah, I mean, I think my gut says the Eagles are not would never do that. But
here's one curveball, Dario. They pick 50 and they pick 53rd. So sometimes these teams that are in very good situations in terms of their overall talent might look at that second rounder as a luxury pick that they either trade for more draft capital or they just use it on the best player on the board. So I just throw Philly out there as an option because DeAndre Swift's a free agent. We don't expect them to spend a ton of money at that running back spot. They've been linked to guys like Derrick Henry, all these sort of guys. More likely than not, it's going to be some cheaper running back that gets a big bump. But you have Philly at 50, Philly at 53, Dallas at 56. There's been a lot of chatter that Dallas is going to use the draft to find a running back. They don't want to pay Pollard. They want to find cheap running back production from a young player. 56 is a dream spot. Green Bay Packers at 58 with A.J. Dillon going to free agency and Aaron Jones getting older. Houston Texans at 59. There's been a lot of chatter about them getting Saquon Barkley. What if they just decide to draft, Marshawn Lloyd at 59? Baltimore Ravens at 62. So if one of those teams pulls the trigger on a running back, like Dario, we're talking about a meteoric rise in a great situation. And I'll say that Dario's in Los Angeles, your Los Angeles Chargers, 69 overall, right nice. There. And Harbaugh, the last time we saw Harbaugh as an NFL head coach, you're talking about that crazy Carlos Hyde season. You're talking about all those Frank Gore seasons, and you're going to say, well, Frank Gore was a volume king. But at the end of the day, we haven't seen a Harbaugh-led NFL team that didn't have a running back receiving a crazy amount of volume. There's a few scenarios where I think that the highest we see one of these guys go is the 105 in single QB. And I was going to say,
there's no way any of them are surpassing that big four of the three receivers and Bowers.
But I will say this though, Dario, you want to go trade for some of those 105s because we've identified four players we really love in Bowers, Adunze, Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr. We can say there's no way, but you know how it is that there's that weird week between the NFL draft and our rookie drafts where people start going crazy about a few running backs. I am not too old to remember when Trey Sermon had that crazy rise up in rookie draft rankings. And there were some leagues where people were pushing him up, and it creates that artificial value where a guy in the top tier falls a little bit. Neighbors and Harrison Jr. won't fall, but there's a chance that you could see a Bowers or a Dunze at the 105 in some single QB leagues.
Yeah, all it takes is one of your league mates reaching because he's already set at wide receiver or tight end, which brings us to another really good question here. super question in the chat on YouTube. It's a FFPC question for you. Would you draft Brock Bowers over Neighbors and Odunze, because this guy has Kincaid and he has the 102 and the 103. FFPC, as we all know, is tight end premium. What are your thoughts?
It's my wheelhouse, Dario. I love FFPC. Shout out to the FFPC. We're going to be doing some cool stuff with the FFPC this summer. I'm in the same boat, Bruce. I've been trying to trade and get a lot of opportunities to draft Bowers, Neighbors, and Odunze. Trying to get that 102 through 104, and then those Superflex picks, trying to get in that top 7. If you already have Kincaid and you have the 102 and 103, I still think I'm going to go. I think I'm going to. Odunze and Bowers are so close for me right now in FFPC. That being said, I think Brock Bowers will remain my 103 and Odunze my 104. The 1.5 tight end premium does make a difference. Like the elite Travis Kelce seasons, and to put it in perspective for anybody who doesn't understand the scoring, like a 1.5 premium on a tight end that can finish tight end 1 overall is immense. There's been years where Travis Kelce is like wide receiver 2 in FFPC, wide receiver 1 in FFPC. So I think I'm still going to go there. I would grab Neighbors and I would grab Bowers, Bruce. But a lot changes with the draft. If Rome Odunze has some sort of nuts landing spot, then go for it. Any way you cut it, though, Bruce, you're in such good shape right now. You're going to get 2 studs to go with Kincaid. I wouldn't let like Kincaid influence this decision. Go with the 2 players that you feel most strongly about after the NFL draft. But right now, my answer to you would be Neighbors, Bowers. Just play a tight end in the flex. And I think you can't go wrong. But
it's a format where you can bludgeon other teams by having an elite tight end in the flex. There's no hesitation to have 2 good tight ends on your roster.
Here's a really good one for you that I didn't see in Reddit. We talk about the gauntlet, and last year, kind of like a hindsight's 2020 type for fantasy football analysis. But one player who ran a disproportionate gauntlet versus 40 was Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua ran the 40 okay, but he ran the gauntlet like 20 miles an hour. And the gauntlet, if anybody didn't watch the combine, you basically run a straight line and you get peppered with pass after pass after pass. The NFL teams are
they're alternating sides.
Yes, good point. So it shows your ability to turn quickly, to react quickly to passes. But Dario, they want to see you run very consistent speed, fast speed while receiving passes, and they don't want to see you weaving in and out. A lot of the Troy Franklin hatred was the poor gauntlet. My criticism of Troy Franklin was the 10-yard split. He was the slowest wide receiver of anybody at the combine in the 10-yard split. But the gauntlet, the correlation between gauntlet versus 40 time, like Keon Coleman looks much faster doing the 3-cone, doing the gauntlet than he did running his 40. So like Keon Coleman's a funny one because I saw him listed as a loser of the combine. I don't really see it. I never expected him to be a blazer. Would I have liked to see 4.55? Sure. But it's not like he was like super slow. He's a guy who can win. He can high point the football. He's 20 years old. He outscored Jaden Reed when they were teammates together at Michigan State. We all saw how Jaden Reed correlated the NFL. But Keon Coleman ran the gauntlet at like 20 miles an hour. Looked good doing it. So I don't know. It's an interesting one. I think that's something where there'll be more and more data of this for years to come after they keep adding more and more.
I don't know if I've seen that publicly anywhere. I'd have to do some deeper digging, but I think that having that like GPS gauntlet time is definitely something more recent than having the 40 times, obviously. So I think that it's hard to say for sure yet. I mean, Puka Nacua, like you said, great hindsight example. But I think it's a little too early to tell, but I think it is a good argument in defense of Coleman. And I mean, I think he's still going to land in the second round somewhere, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I think Coleman's top 45 draft capital. I've seen like the fail-safe, somewhere in that New Orleans Saints in the second round. I think that was Hayden Winks was saying he could see that. but I've seen I think he's pretty locked in. And like you said, the draft capital for a wide receiver with that profile that gets second round draft capital, like it's not a guy you want to not have on your dynasty teams. There's certain people fading him based on separation, though. Like if you have separation concerns that he's not going to be able to separate on an NFL field, that would matter way more to me than like a 4.6 versus a 4.55.
Yeah, agreed with that.
So I'm re-answering your question. I'm going back and doing a couple more of these. What else you got, Dario?
I think this is a good one that you can just kind of take in whatever direction you choose. Who's your sleeper in the third round of rookie drafts this year?
It's such depth when it comes to the wide receiver position that I think that there's going to be some interesting wide receivers available to us. I think Ricky Pearsall is one that I'm getting a little more interested in. Dario, it's funny because I think he could end up being a second rounder in the NFL draft, which could propel him into second rounds of rookie drafts. But right now, I think he's probably a third round pick in rookie drafts. This is a guy that ran extremely well. He's a little bit older prospect, Arizona State kid, goes to Florida, has a really good Senior Bowl, and then he backs it up with some just ridiculous numbers at the combine. He had, I believe, I'm going to look this up, the highest vertical, third highest. He had a 42-inch vertical. He ran a 4.41 40 and a 10.9 broad jump. He had probably the catch of the year. I think it was Florida versus Charlotte this year. I don't even
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah,
it's
like
just
the crazy
Google it.
one-handed
Yeah,
catch.
it's like a
We've
Michael
all seen
Jordan
it. We've all
catch.
seen it.
Michael Jordan catch. I'm getting into Ricky Pearsall. I think he's interesting. I think when you go a little bit further down the list, we took him down slightly. Jatavian Sanders, I think, will start falling a little bit in non-tight end premium. I think he's still an interesting player. Malik Washington is a guy that I'm interested in. Malik Washington had over 100 receptions at UVA last year, an absurd amount of receptions. And then he had a very, very strong combine athletically. He's like a short, thick, like running back sized wide receiver with a really crazy, I think it was 4.47 at 192 pounds and a 42.5-inch vertical. So he's much better athletically than we thought he was going to be. And he's a mega producer. And Dario, as we know, one of the biggest indicators of future NFL success is college success, especially at the wide receiver position. So both of those guys are interesting to me. I also think
I would drop in Jalen Polk as a name too.
Good one.
I think, sitting as the wide receiver 2 behind Odunze and Washington, still produced, looked very good at the combine. And I mean, he's got the size. That's the thing with this receiver class is it's just size after size after size. I mean, we saw last year's class when we were talking about how, the small wide receiver is in vogue. And this year's class is flipping that completely on its head. So it'll be exciting to see how these guys translate to the league. But I think Polk, pretty good speed score, relatively young for a prospect. Would have liked to see him break out a little bit sooner, but his sophomore year, it seems like he was dealing with some injuries. So that kind of tends to hold back that breakout age. But I think he's really appealing. What do you think about Bucky Irving after he kind of disappointed at the combine? There weren't many guys that hurt their stock, but Bucky Irving was definitely one of them.
Bucky Irving was depressing. It actually physically pained me to watch him run the 40. And Dario, it was so funny because when we talked about Bucky Irving, it was always a guy that we thought could run a very fast 40. And FanDuel and DraftKings and all these people that offer you the prop bets for the combine, they also seem to indicate that too, because they had Bucky Irving at 30 plus 3,300 to run the fastest 40 time. And Jalen Wright was listed in the top 10. Everybody knew he was going to blaze, but there weren't too many other running backs they were offering that prop for. So Bucky Irving, this was shocking. It was far more shocking to see Bucky Irving run a 4.6 than it was to see Audric Estime run a 4.7. Bucky Irving needed to be fast, though.
4.55 is not quite a 4.6, just to be fair.
Okay, but at 190
but yeah,
pounds,
it was still far from what we wanted to see from him.
So Dario, after you can explain the speed score to everybody, but when we talk about speed score, like the running backs that were Bucky Irving's size in the NFL, Jahmyr Gibbs, 4.3 guy, Devon Achane, 4.3 guy, James Cook.
I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is almost 10 pounds heavier than Bucky. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs
That's a good point.
199, Bucky Irving 192.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like that much, but when 200, 205 is like kind of the bare minimum to be a workhorse running back in the league, coming in at 192 is very different from coming in at 199. So that already, just with their measurements, you're like, oh crap, that's not great. And then he runs a 4.55 speed score, like you're saying, is basically weight adjusted 40 time. And because you come in light and then you come in slow, next thing you know, you're in the 27th percentile for all running backs in speed score. Like you said, 95 plus is really kind of that threshold we look for running backs. He came in at an 89.6 speed score. Also did not show much explosiveness. I mean, his jumps, 7th percentile for running backs. So maybe he should have hired a track coach or something at the start of the offseason. But maybe he just doesn't have it.
Shout out to Phil Knight. What's going on up there? Because
you
guys are
right.
supposed to have all this access, and the two guys that we were a little bit annoyed about the athletic testing were Irving and Franklin. And I'll say this, Dario, like I love the speed score. I think this, like, I don't get nearly as analytical as you do in my analysis, but I love the speed score because it's been very predictive for fantasy football success. And draft capital. Speed score and draft capital for running backs is usually a good one. This year, 11 of the top 13 scorers in PPR at the running back spot were all day 2 or day 1 picks. And speed score wise, you can find guys who are, like we talked about, Javonte Williams, Blake Corum in that 95 plus. And you can kind of talk yourself into that 90 to 95 range. But once you go sub 90, you're chasing outliers. You're chasing the Kyron Williams. And that's so Bucky Irving doesn't have the speed score. He's not going to have the draft capital. I need to adjust my process. This was a guy that I was pounding the table for a while. The Oregon Pro Day will be important. I'll say that the one thing is we don't always trust the Pro Day 40s, but if he can make a little bit of an adjustment here, maybe there was a chance that he was a little banged up and we just don't know about it. And he played through it at the combine. Certainly doesn't look this slow on film for his size, but it's a hard profile to bet on. It's a little disappointing. But at the same time, we got wins for the other running backs. So, here we are.
Yeah, I think we wanted to be able to comp him to Devon Achane, but he came in a whole 0.2 seconds slower at about the same height and weight. I think it's like if Achane was not fast, that's Bucky Irving.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm cleaning up some of these Reddit questions. And we usually go for about an hour, guys. So if you want to get your questions in, try to get them in. Even when we go off the air here, I'll still finish out and make sure we have everything answered. But this is a lot of fun. This is like 50 minutes have flown by, Dario. It's great when we're doing Dynasty conversation and we have a ton of Dynasty news like 2 days ago. But I'll throw out to you, Mike Evans. Mike Evans re-signs with Tampa Bay. Brandon Ayuk, we had like 3 hours where it was like the Brandon Ayuk's getting traded rumor, and then we get a correction where
that was nonsense.
It's funny, but you dare to dream, and then of course like T. Higgins and Michael Pittman go off the board. This is like going to be a season where teams are valuing the wide receiver position with like a huge emphasis. The second contracts for a lot of these wide receivers are getting to be massive, and you have a unbelievable class of wide receivers. I think this year that the record for most wide receivers drafted in the first round is in play. I don't know if it'll be broken, but I think it could be
7?
tied. 7's the record. You can already come up with 6 locks on one hand. You and I, we both said Neighbors Odunze, and Marvin Harrison Jr. are locks.
They're probably locks to be top 10. Yeah.
Xavier Worthy's a lock.
Worthy. Then
Brian Thomas is a
pretty
lock.
solid. Brian
Mitchell,
Thomas.
you would bet. Lad McConkey would be 7. and then somebody getting pushed up in the first round would be 8. So 8 would be the record, 7 would be a tie. I think we're right there. I know
mean,
Cody
8 would be tough.
Carpenter.
That's a quarter of the first round picks. But I think that you're right. NFL teams are realizing just how much of a difference like quality wide receivers can elevate a so-so quarterback. And I think probably second after quarterback, they have the biggest impact in terms of offensive efficiency.
Yeah, I hear you. So I think that's one that I'm kind of looking at is, could we see at least right near 7? I know Cody Carpenter and I believe Matty Kiwoom and him worked on that draft together right after Saturday's combine. They projected 6 wide receivers in the first round, so we're getting close to it, and that makes me really excited. And you also bring up the fact that it's a quarter of the first round. Then you add in the fact we get Brock Bowers lock. Sounds like we're going to have 4 quarterbacks with a possibility of a 5th sneaks in the back end. And then you're going to get like 6 offensive tackles drafted. So this is a offensive minded first round this year. I don't know. It's a great one for us in fantasy football, unless you're an IDP person and you're like, what's going on? Where's my guys?
Yeah, it's going to be a really exciting draft for sure. On that note, we got a question about whether we're excited for the NFL draft player profiler frat house. How excited are you, Theo?
I'm very excited. We're actually doing some cool stuff this year. Dario and I will both be there. We had a great time last year in Kansas City. It's definitely a good amount of work on our end. I know Dario's grinding the projections during the draft, and giving us like on the cuff, like how did this work out for this player? And we have had a lot of the similar guys returning. Cody's going to be there. We also have Memphis Young of the Dynasty Warzone joining us this year. Bradley Stalder will be there this year. But we're also going to have some very cool announcements on guests appearing on our stream, which is something that we have not done in the past. Alan Sislowski, Mike Shope, they're both going to be appearing on our stream at some point. And then we're going to have some pretty cool announcements, something we can't really announce yet, but we're working on a couple other cool correlations with maybe some other sites where they're going to show up on the stream. But it's great, Dario. Like, you can, if you want fantasy focused NFL draft coverage, we're the place to be. 3 days. It's great. I can't wait to get there. The house is cool this year. I wouldn't quite call it a frat house. It's much nicer than a frat house.
Yeah. It's a frat cabin in the woods.
That's right. It's like an away weekend for your fraternity, more so than anything.
Right. I mean, unlike most of the player profiler dudes, do not have a wife and kids to be getting away from. Yeah. But I'm sure you guys are all especially looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a long. I'll say it's a long time to be away. Would be the one thing, but it's a lot of fun. I know last year I think I came back. I skipped day 3 because I had something with my kids. This year I'm cleared. I'm doing day 3. So that's it, man. Give me a cup of coffee. I'll get in front of the mic and we'll just talk about these guys. And Dario will project the guy, and if it's a guy I like, we'll argue about it. That's pretty much what I did with you and Billy Muzio last year.
Like you said, I think people don't realize how much work goes into that setup. I mean, we're basically setting up a live news studio in a random house for a couple days. So we'll be testing all the AV equipment, setting up more cables and cameras and microphones than you think anyone should ever need. And then we'll just be having a blast.
Yeah, and we'll have actual people at the NFL draft too, which is always cool. It's always a little bit of a dice roll on how well the Wi-Fi is going to be working at the NFL draft itself. When every single media person's trying to connect to the same Wi-Fi, it can have some issues. But it's great to get the Anand Nanduri and Jason Allwine and a few others are going to be at the actual NFL draft, giving us instant reactions, which is always a really cool thing to see. And on last year, big hat tip to our guy Anand Nanduri. He was able to get us. We were beating ESPN and the NFL Network by like 10 minutes on all the picks because we're in the right place at the right time. Having somebody there, we end up getting a text saying, hey, this is coming through. So a lot of good things happen when you're actually live at the NFL draft. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It seems like a good note to wrap up today's show on is giving people all that excitement for our NFL draft coverage. I mean, we're clearly less than 2 months away now, probably what, 7 weeks.
Yeah, 7
So
weeks, and we get our rookie guide will be also on the horizon sometime end of March. We should be dropping our rookie guide, which is going to be really, really exciting. A lot of really cool stuff going on at Player Profiler. Ian Miller, Cody Carpenter, those announcements. They're going to be doing a little more content for us this month and moving on. We've just got a lot of good things going. Definitely check out the Dynasty rankings. Dario and I are going to be having a little bit more of a summit this week. Clean up a couple things here and there, but our rookie rankings, I think, are really good right now, and they're updated. So if you want to know where Jalen Wright, Marshawn Lloyd, Trey Benson fall, you just got to check it out. It's
that
right
was
there.
You were on top of that. I mean, last night got the email from Theo. A lot of all caps, a lot of bold.
Yeah, I got excited. People bust my chops about the enthusiasm with the combine and the rookies, but I love it. I love when we get this sort of information. And Dario, we have all the pro days coming up too. We'll be covering those. What I think was super cool is, you have your school like USC doing a traditional pro day, which is going to be very cool. We'll see Caleb Williams a little bit more. Obviously LSU with Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, and then we get to see the greatest tight end of all time, Brock Bowers, run the 40-yard dash at Georgia Pro Day. But have you looked at what the Big 12's doing? I think this could be the future, where Big 12 has 3 days in Frisco, Texas, I believe, where all of the schools are sending their draft eligible prospects, and they're having their own like mini combine where they're working in connection with the NFL. So if you look at I think Jason Allwine or somebody at Player Profiler tweeted out the pro day schedule. It says Big 12 days. I think that's awesome. I think every conference should do that. We love it, and we love getting
peace to the Pac-12.
And we love getting the great. Well, Dario, you still have
rubbing it in, Theo. God,
Oregon State and Washington State own the name of the Pac-12. So you're gonna have like the Big West schools as Pac-12 schools in like a couple months. It'll be like Idaho versus Oregon State in the Pac-12.
I'll be driving down to San Diego State for some college football games.
San Diego State turned them down. San Diego State doesn't want to deal with it. It's San Diego State's too high level to go with those guys. The Mountain West is in a good spot. So yeah, man. This was a lot of fun though. Keep getting your questions in. I'm gonna answer these. I'm gonna catch up on some of these Reddit ones. But next week, same time, same channel. And look for a bunch of podcasts. We just dropped Sonic Truth today. I did a Dynasty Life last night with Ian Miller. We got Future Cast coming out this week. It's going to be a fun week in the Roto Underworld.
Hell yeah.